This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 496, recorded on July 8th, 2021. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska, beautiful Omaha, Nebraska. And of course, we post a show, and there won't be a ton of show notes because the topic will speak for itself tonight, but we post a few show notes out at the AverageGuy.tv. Big thanks to John from Unraid last week. John came in and saved the day. Mike, we lost you a little bit last week. We'll talk about that next week and what broke down, but give us the 30-second version of what went awry for you.
Well, so my whole network was not down, but so flaky, as in certain things worked for a second, then they wouldn't work for a second, then they would. And long story short, we'll talk about this next week after diagnosing it. Turns out to be a faulty main switch in my server rack. So I think the power supply is going out. And so a bunch of ports on there not working right now. Found the ports that are working. So we're coming to you from a working port. Fingers crossed it stays up for the next week, 2 weeks, because we'll talk about it more next week. But essentially what I found out is the way I've set up my network with VLANs and PoE for my wireless access points all throughout the house, it is not easy to just say, okay, disregard that switch. Here's a dumb switch to replace it because all my VLANs don't work. My PoE that switch doesn't have PoE. So I was stuck trying to just fiddle, and it was driving me absolutely insane. But yeah, we'll go into more detail next week. If you guys want a fun diagnosing story, you can reminisce with me on my pain.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up the question, like, do we need all these layers?
I think that's what we need to talk about.
So that's
just the complexity that we have put ourselves through. It's great and it's so much fun, but when it goes wrong, it goes wrong.
I know, it goes horrible.
And we'll talk about how I was a little fortuitous with some of my other decisions that I've talked to you guys about that I made before last week. That kind of made that pain a little bit easier to bear because I wasn't reliant on as many services self-hosted as I was before.
Well, big thanks to John. He filled in for you, Mike. He was like, and he did a great job. We just had him for about 35 minutes. And so, John, thanks for coming on from Unraid and doing what he does. Tonight, we've got Rich Hay. Rich Hay is back after a year hiatus, we'll call it. You just took a sabbatical as well. Rich, you got to be well rested. Welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
It's good to be back. Thanks.
Good to have you. What so Windows Observer is still you're still posting out there?
WindowsObserver.com still cranking. That site is now 26 years old, I think. I don't think it'll go anywhere. I am doing a little more writing on there because I can do some consumer-based writing now that I'm purely focused on enterprise IT at ITPro today. So Windows, when we talked last week and we said, hey, let's do, you want to talk Windows 11. And I actually did my first podcast on Sunday in 6 months. Everybody knows that follows Faith, Tech, and Space that I've kind of been in and out over the last couple of years because of my schoolwork and my studies and stuff toward the diaconate. So it just happened to be just the perfect week homework wise and all of that stuff. And Windows 11 came out last week, our first preview build. So it was a great subject to talk about. So it was nice to get back behind the mic for that.
Good to hear your voice.
And I couldn't, the funny thing is I had to reset everything on the computer because I installed Windows 11 on it, the leak build. And then I got the final, the first release. And so I sat down that morning. I didn't have Audacity installed. I didn't have my MP3 tag program installed. I had nothing going for doing a podcast except for OneNote. So got that sorted out real quick and got going. So it was fun to be back. And, I thought, what's that rhythm going to be like? And it just kind of comes back naturally. It's further proof that the way I do my show is natural to me. So it was fun.
I always joke because I listen to you like at 1.4 speed and you talk fast as it is.
And so you're getting me at 2.0.
Oh, you were just rocking. By the time I got to work, I'd be frustrated from trying to because you would just unload information. And so I'd get to work and I got to slow Rich down. Slow down, Rich. Slow down. Well, Rich, good to have you tonight. And
Appreciate it.
You're coming off a sabbatical. What does one do on a sabbatical? Did you do something fun? Did you just rest?
Well,
what
mainly it was just kind of rest and not just be under the work kind of deadlines and things like that. I mean, I typically produce anywhere between about 10 pieces of content a month of various types, right? Feature or reported how-to, case studies, or just news pieces. And I, we had originally had some plans to do some work on a project my wife was interested in doing, and she ultimately decided not to go forward with that. But, I did some stuff around the house that needed to be done. The big garage clean out. We actually swapped 2 of our rooms. So we took the spare bedroom from downstairs, switched that to upstairs, broke that room down, and created the spare room up over the garage. And we kind of put together ourselves a prayer room to be able to go in and do focused prayer, when we do our prayer. And so that was really nice. We did have another set of floors installed. So we knocked out 3 more rooms, I think, with the new vinyl planking. And then it was just kind of the nice, relaxed, not having deadlines, and that kind of, and I did some writing during that time. I probably could have podcast, but I didn't. Because I was in studies too. So, that hasn't changed. In fact, we're in under a year now until we're done to our ordination. It's scheduled for June 25th of next year, and God willing, that's where we'll be. But this summer we're doing double scripture classes online. So they got us doubled up big time this summer. So, but we're 2/3 of the way through, and we're working through the final 4 weeks. So, but it was just kind of nice not to have any kind of responsibility in that sense.
Right. Now, good for you. I kind of a halftime break
and we're still in COVID too. So that kind of kills things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we're moving out.
Yeah.
We want to talk Windows 11 tonight. We're going to spend the rest of our time here. I think there's a lot to talk about, kind of around it. We probably won't dig deep into the features or tearing those kinds of things apart. We can talk a little bit about some. For folks who've maybe not been paying attention, June 24th was the announcement of that this Windows 11 would be in 11 o'clock Eastern. That Windows 11 would be indeed a product, and that would be available in a couple weeks. That couple weeks, I think it was last week, that it became available through the dev channel, right? Through the dev channel for those insiders. You can still, Rich, right? Anybody can still sign up if they want to do this.
Oh yeah, anybody can be an insider, so you can sign up and get on Dev Channel and get it. Now, the big key around Windows, the operating system itself, this first preview build, brings a lot of new features to it. If you've watched the live stream event on the 24th, you saw a lot of those things. Most of that is in that first preview build. They had an updated build released today. We still don't have the Android apps in Windows Store. That was probably the biggest surprise for me on the event, was them saying that Android apps were going to be in the Microsoft Store on Windows 11. They're actually using Amazon's platform. So if you have a Fire tablet or something like that, you're used to using Amazon's app store, that's what's going to tie into the Microsoft Store, and you'll be able to run Android apps on Windows 11. So I think that's what everybody's really excited about getting their hands on, right? That's probably the big deal, because truly Windows 11 is Windows 10 at its core. I won't say it's just a new UI, because it's not. This OS runs so good, even in this stage of development. It runs so good, I'm running it on 6 physical devices and in 1 virtual machine. I've just dove in. The advice I always gave was don't go dev early. Don't go dev early on your main drive. I've done it. I'm doing it. Yeah. But it's fun. It's kind of nice after 6 years. Windows 10 is a great OS. And, we kind of got used to that cadence of semi-annual releases. But it's kind of exciting to see new stuff. And there are some very visual changes with Windows 11. And everybody has their opinions on that, and that's fine. There's still some inconsistencies in Windows 11, right? There's still some stuff that doesn't take on the dark theme. Some of it's legacy stuff that's probably going to go away. But they have made a lot of strides in working on this that get rid of some of that stuff. The Windows 10, especially UI work. So it's pretty impressive at this point. Like I said, I'm running on my main desktop since 28th of June, and I've not yet had a crash. I've had a couple Explorer lockups. But other than that, I've been doing my day-to-day work on it, and without any major issues.
Well, that's impressive.
I agree, especially now. Granted, it's the first public developer build.
Right.
They've been flighting internal builds probably for quite a few months at Microsoft, but in fact, they definitely have been flighting insider builds, because the leaked build was an insider build, but it was incomplete. But I'm running on Surface Go, the original Surface Go, and it actually handles it. Now, Surface Go does not meet the requirements that Microsoft published, but it's running it. I've got a mini PC box that I got about a year and a half ago. That's a really good Celeron kind of 8th gen processor, runs it very well. And I've got it on my main desk. I built a computer during COVID, during pandemic lockdown last year. So I built myself a new main desktop, and it's, I'm running on a 7-year-old i5 from HP, an Elite 1000. It's running pretty good on those things. It really is, pretty impressively. So a lot of people will see the visual, but what people will miss is that all the work that's gone on underneath, under the hood kind of thing, I think. But this is going to be a good upgrade. I think it's great. The biggest controversy is probably around specs, right? But here's the funny part of specs. Did you know that Windows 10 was using the same specifications that was required for Windows 7? 12-year-old specs, right? At this point in time. And all they've done is bumped up, it's no longer going to run on 32-bit CPUs. It's going to be a 64-bit OS pure. What's the dual core? So you can't be on a single core anymore. It's got to be on a dual core. Memory, I think the memory is still 8 and the storage is 64, those minimums. Processor generations are probably the biggest discussion point, right? Because they initially published 8th gen or higher, but it will run on some 7. In fact, they've now opened up the dev channel for you to install on most any system. Before, it was going to be grandfathered and you needed to be, in order to get in. But so far, it seems like they're stepping back from the specifications cliff, and they're going to pay attention to dev builds and see how things go.
Well, that's super impressive that you're saying it could be on the main machine, because that was going to be, my overall question for tonight was, this PC that I'm talking to you guys on is really, now that especially that I'm not working from home anymore, it's my gaming PC. So I play some video games, not critical for me. I play like every once in a blue moon. I mainly use it as a ham radio rig. So I run some ham radio control software that controls some of my radios, do some digital modes. And so I guess, overall on the upgrade experience, I'm curious, can it just kind of go over and keep all my stuff installed that I have, or does it need to be a clean install?
Yeah, no. If you're on Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11. There are a couple known issues in the current release notes around upgrades.
Okay.
Because there are some deprecated features that won't be coming to Windows 11 from Windows 10. So take a look at that list and just make sure none of that impacts you. Okay. But again, the normal advice that you give to anybody when it comes to developer channel builds is you shouldn't be running them on your main machine. But I think the excitement around Windows 11, I did the same thing with Windows 10. When we started getting builds for Windows 10, I jumped in early. And I game on this machine, and I got 2 main games, Microsoft Flight Simulator and Forza Horizon 4. And both work great running under Windows, because again, the core structure of this OS is Windows 10. But there's obviously been some optimizations done and things like that. And obviously the UI is the big difference.
Well, that's what on the deprecation side that you just mentioned, the one I saw that really surprised me, and maybe I read it wrong, was Cortana. Is that no longer?
Well, Cortana's kind of been on her way out of Windows 10 even.
Okay.
You can still turn on Cortana and you can still log in with your account, but Cortana has really made the move towards the enterprise. It's mainly, and even at the enterprise level, it's not quote unquote Cortana per se. So they kind of made a move away from that.
Okay, so I had missed that boat on like it being on its way out. So that was surprising to me. I mean, I've never used it, so It's been on this machine. But I figured there had to be some users out there who really enjoyed it. But interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So you're the type of, you could run it on a main machine. You're that type of user. What happened was when the leaked build came out, and I followed the Reddit, right? The Reddit Windows 10 subreddit. And so many people wanted to jump on it and try it and get it and everything. And then after the 28th, I'd love to know the numbers. I'd love to know how many people installed it. They're not going to release that info, but it would be cool to know how many people jumped on it. when it came out in dev last week.
Well, I don't know if many people, like for me, the reason I knew it came out was because of all the articles about how it was leaked before.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently. I think that was actually beneficial to Windows. Like that leak got them a lot of press. I probably wouldn't have heard of Windows 11 coming out even in dev, because for those of us who aren't subscribed to Twitter feeds, especially that like really go in depth with Windows stuff, you might miss it. I'm even missing some Apple news, and I'm a big Apple guy, right? Like haven't been paying attention that much. So I think that news article was really interesting, how it was leaked ahead of time.
I tell you what's interesting about that leak, because I live in social media, that came out, everybody was writing about it, talking about it and stuff like that. And the Windows Twitter account, the official Windows Twitter account, made a tweet and said, "We know what you're seeing is just the start. We've got more for you on the 24th of June." Never would you see Microsoft on an official manner talk about a leaked build.
Yeah.
And they did. And we had a media event. So when they had that event, media got a unique channel to go, and we had a little talk from one member of Microsoft before the stream. And even then it was acknowledged that leaked build, and it didn't, as we saw on the 28th, and as we saw on the 24th, that leaked build had just like a little bit of what we eventually saw in the first preview build. Here's the other interesting thing, right? We got a new build today. What are we used to when it comes to insider builds and insider testing in the dev channel? Are build to build updates, right? So you install a completely new build that migrates all your data, programs, app settings over. It looks like Windows 11 is going to be updated via cumulative updates. Today's was a cumulative update that updated the build to the new release, not a build to build. So it eliminates a lot of risk, right? Because when you're migrating that much data, you got to worry about disk space. You got to worry about all kinds of stuff. And people run into problems with that. It's a big headache in the insider program. People go and build to build on gear that doesn't have this, that can't support the space. And so today, seeing that release as a cumulative update looks like that's going to be their norm. That kind of works for them very well. They got the core OS down, and the cumulative update, just like they do monthly updates, allow them to take care of the OS. And in fact, they shipped a fix in today's build for that print spooler malware thing that's going on. So
a pretty fast update today too. I mean,
it was quick, very quick.
I installed it when I got home, and it was done in, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe.
Yeah, very quick.
So let's for clarification purposes for folks listening. So if you're going to join the insider program, which is not really a program, anybody can do it, but
yeah,
if you go into the settings on the desktop there, you can get to the there's an insider channel section in there, and then go on the dev build. That'll really work. You can put that on any PC you have. So if you want to run it, I'm running it on a Surface Pro 3. That's a 4th gen Core i3.
That technically is a device that doesn't meet their initial specs.
Wouldn't. No, and it kind of lacks some hard drive space too.
Yeah.
But for dev, they're letting it run. Now we still don't really know final specs.
That's right.
They've released this 8th gen. They've been hinting about 7th gen. So there's that. So if you want to run it now and you got any equipment, you just want to mess around with it,
poke it around,
run anything you can get. You installed it on a Go, which is super surprising,
right? That
works, right? But it does. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, though. The TPM is what's caused.
Oh yeah, those kind of things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of a real thing, and that
it is. No, very much so.
What? Yeah. How do you feel?
So this was one of the other specs that they are going to require, or at least it's so. Prior to Windows 11 coming out in preview builds, TPM minimum standard was 1.2, right? And that's been around for a while. Turns out OEMs have been required to provide 2.0 TPM on their chipset since 2015 or so. So most people with a device that's 5 or 6 years old is going to have this. What we found out, I actually went online and researched for this computer I built last year, does not have a TPM chip on the board. It's a gaming motherboard, so it's not built for one. But so I went searching for one on Newegg before everything fired off. These things have tripled and quadrupled in value in the third-party market, by the way. but most people won't need that, right? So if your machine's around 5 years old or newer, if you go into your BIOS and if you're running Intel, I think it's called PTT or something like that. Or if you're running an AMD chip, it's called f TPM. And that will actually give you TPM 2.0 from your CPU. And it works with Windows 11. So it helps you meet that requirement. Like Jim said, you can install dev even though you don't meet these minimums. But Microsoft is trying to move the needle on here is security. And granted, their big focus tends to be enterprise and enterprise security. We see that as they kind of worked Windows 10 through the years. But all of this will introduce a higher level of security even for consumers eventually. And again, the bump in the specs is minimal when you really look at it in the scheme of things. But we do have a lot of folks, not everybody's like us that, I like to run the latest and the greatest stuff, right? So I built myself a new machine last year because my old desktop was just not cutting it anymore. And it allows Microsoft to implement better security, which will ultimately provide better security for an individual system and across the board, not only to consumers, but to the enterprise as well. So, and TPM is about, it will help you with BitLocker so encrypting your hard drive, and it holds the keys so that your hard drive can be decrypted when you boot up. But if it was to be taken out of that system and away from that key, it can't be accessed. So it's protection of data.
July 28th, 2016 is that date that was mandated. Oh,
that was the date. Okay, 2016.
2016. That's
5 years ago. Yeah,
5 years ago, mandated that TPM 2.0 be on all systems. New hardware going forward, right? And so I'm sure there were some before that were doing that. If you probably have a high-end motherboard from 2014 or 2015, you could check that. Probably. It may be 2.0 already. Laptop built in that generation, probably going to have it on there. So, although to be honest, hardware's lasted, Rich, longer.
Oh no, I agree.
Right. I mean, I'm running some 2013 gear and some 2012 gear that still runs pretty well. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to put Windows 11 on those things.
Yeah, no. Windows 10 is going to be good for another 4 years.
Yeah, and I think maybe even a little longer than that. So,
who knows? Yeah,
right. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those things, and I'm not banking on it, but actually, by that time, some of that equipment will be 15 years old. It will be time to roll it on.
Yep. For a lot of other reasons.
Yes.
Let alone the new requirements for Windows 11.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I just went into Windows Insider Program in the settings, right? I was like, okay, well, let's see, we'll get this teed up for after the podcast. And so this is a new PC that I built a year ago. It says that it doesn't meet the minimum hardware requirements. I'm like, I wonder how. It's really interesting.
All right, so do this. Do Windows key R to get to the run command and run tpm.msc.
Oh, compatible TPM cannot be found.
Okay, so most likely you need to activate it in your BIOS.
And a little F TPM because I'm on a Ryzen.
Yep. Okay. So if you're on a Ryzen like I am, I'm on a Ryzen 5, I think is what I did.
That's what I am too.
But if you go into the BIOS, you'll find it. It'll be labeled FTPM, and that will turn on 2.0.
Now, is that motherboard specific? I mean, I don't even know. I can't remember.
No, it should be Ryzen. Any Ryzen motherboard BIOS should have that setting in it.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm on an what is it? ARSUS. I don't know how to pronounce it, but AORSUS is my motherboard, the X570, and it was right there in the BIOS for the chip.
Okay. Our friends at Think Computers, so Ryan and Bob, have actually done a video that show you how in all the different BIOS.
Oh, perfect! Nice.
How to do this. So they just
great.
Put that out.
Okay. That's perfect.
Earlier today, I think, or yesterday, they put that out.
And I got to tell you, there's been some really good content. There's a guy on Twitter that it works in security. He's one of the senior program manager at Microsoft in security. It's like Wizzle Microsoft or something like that. It's a really weird handle, but he has also written some content about these new spec stuff, trying to explain to people the why. Rich Woods, I don't know if you knew this or not, but a few months ago, Rich Woods moved away from NeoWin. He's no longer writing for NeoWin. He writes for XDA, which has always been kind of a mobile platform focused platform. And he's now their managing editor for their PC part of the site they just started building. And he's written a really good kind of, hey, yeah, the specs are out there, but this isn't a whole lot to get wrapped around. And he kind of tries to put out this take on things that kind of just take a deep breath. We're not there yet to this being mandatory.
Well, and let's be honest, Rich, right now, there isn't a lot of reason to jump. Like when you look at Windows 11, it's okay. It has a little bit of a UI change where the taskbar icons go to the center. There's some refreshed in the sys tray. There's some refreshed.
Yep. They've actually created a couple buttons over there out of the icons.
Right. And beyond that, I mean, you get a few backgrounds. Now, I know there's a lot more going on, but
the settings app is just beautiful.
It's much easier to navigate.
Yep.
It's cleaner, right? But
but
even the Windows 10 settings app was usable, right?
Oh yeah, I agree.
So it's people are thinking about this. If you have old computers, one, you don't have to make this move, right?
Nope,
and
not
two,
at all.
Today there isn't a lot of reason to. I was listening to Paul and Mary Jo on Windows Weekly, and Paul did mention, I think there is some gaming, like there is some Xbox code that's making.
Oh yeah, they're gonna some of the stuff that's on the Series S and Series X, like Auto HDR, the new disk access speed. So if you're running like an M2 NVMe disk in your system, that's the same type of hard drive SSD that's in the Series X and the Series S. So you'll get faster. I mean, I'm seeing that already just on this system, and it doesn't even have that stuff yet, right? So if you're Auto HDR, if your screen and your card supports it. So it's almost, I won't say they're turning it into an Xbox, but Windows 10 has become a very robust gaming platform. And when you look at Game Pass Ultimate, which includes just a ton of titles for PC as well as the Xbox, Game Pass is just so worth if you enjoy a little bit of gaming, Xbox Game Pass is so worth the investment.
Agreed.
They just added Electronic Arts stuff, so it was a separate subscription before. And today they announced July games already, and today they announced like 3 or 6 more that are going to go into Game Pass. I mean, it is the best value in gaming, but they're bringing some features to Windows 10 and 11 PCs or Windows 11 PCs that are going to bring some of that kind of performance, access speeds, performance, visuals, and stuff like. But I got to tell you, I think I'm running a 1660 NVIDIA 1660 Super. It's got like 6 gigabyte of VRAM on it.
That's what I'm running too.
Horizon,
the same exact machine.
Forza Horizon 4 in my full screen, so that's like 1440 by 3160 or something like that. Corner to corner, edge to edge is just beautiful. I mean, Microsoft Flight Simulator, that's a challenging game anyway visually, but it really does. I mean, so those features that they're adding the Xbox aspect, they're taking what they've done in 10, bumping that up a little bit as they move it over to 11 with more features and stuff like that. So the question mark of whether or not you need a console comes into play here if you've got the right PC.
Well, I mean, I think we're already with some of the xCloud work, we're already seeing this idea, right, of
xCloud.
Hey,
sorry, Xbox Cloud Gaming is what it's called now.
Yeah, what they've changed.
But it was xCloud.
Right. And so what that tells me a little bit, if we're reading the tea leaves, is that a lot of these updates, they're taking what they learned on Xbox, bringing it over to Windows 10, now Windows 11.
Yep.
And some of those system requirements, like you're going to have these anyways.
Yep.
Like as a gamer, you're probably going to be on a 7th or 8th gen. You're probably going to have that TPM chip that's there. You're probably going to have the NVMe drives that you can use for that. I think that gaming may be the one exception. I just kind of said, for a lot of people, you don't have to go this route. But I think this could be a big boost for gaming and gamers on it. And it could be a big, and we see this release this fall or next.
They say holiday. So I put that kind of October to December kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay. And Rich, think about this. We can't get Xboxes right now.
No, I know.
Right. So,
right.
What do you think of a pitch of like, okay, I know you're having trouble getting the hardware, but gamers, you might have that hardware already. run it on the PC
or the hardware that will run and be efficient on it. Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
right, yeah.
Just like the issues around the availability of the consoles, it's the same thing with PC parts.
Right.
I am so glad I chose to build my system last year when I did, because that was before the chip shortage happened. It was before prices went kind of nuclear and just went crazy. I mean, and I build my system. So when I build a new system, I typically build it with at least 2 upgrade cycles in the hardware. I usually will go high end on the motherboard and just get there first. And then I will probably take 2 or 3, a couple generations older CPU and start there. So I was basically cannibalizing my old desktop and bringing some of the stuff forward, right, with the addition of the NVMe stuff. And so I thought my memory would carry over. Oh man, that day came and I pulled the memory out of the old box, and I wrote this all up on windowsobserver.com. I kind of walked through what I did with the system, but my memory didn't work. So I had to make an emergency order to Best Buy and go pick it up the next morning to get 32 gig of memory. So that allowed me to bump the memory up. So that in a year or two, I can go to a higher end CPU probably, and, keep the system refreshed that way. That's just how I approach it. I don't know how you do it, Mike, but.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. And actually, my plan on this is I'm concerned that my Unraid box, that is an old CPU and motherboard. So I'm going to be cannibalizing. Probably my next purchase will be upgrading this machine, but actually taking a lot of these pieces and putting them and making that Unraid box upgraded. I don't really need more power in this thing, but I do the same sort of thing, especially with like power supplies and things like that. And especially with how good AMD has been with using the same socket over the last few years, I could really upgrade my processor and get a lot of bang for the buck. And usually I'll roll my GPU into the Unraid box. So that's what I did. My 1060 is in the Unraid box, and it's mining / transcoding for Plex when it needs to. And then the 1660 was the upgrade. So I do the same sort of thing, but actually it goes from PC to Unraid home server.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And mine usually goes to my wife's box. Yeah. Although I haven't upgraded her box. We just discovered in about 8 years. So she's been working on a Surface Laptop 3, right? In her craft room. She's writing a book about her El Camino journey. And so she hasn't been on her desktop for like months. And so she came in here the other day and kind of just sat down waiting for me and was browsing the web on her computer. And we were talking, she goes, something's really wrong with this computer. I was like, yeah, it's 8 years old. You've been on a Surface Laptop 3 that's a year and a half old. Right. Microsoft did send me the Surface Laptop 4, the nice big 15-inch AMD Ryzen with the Microsoft Surface AMD chip in it. Beautiful, beautiful screen. They sent it to me so I could run Windows 11 on the latest, quote unquote, the latest gear. Yeah. But it loves new hardware. I see that on my main desktop. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Just doing some inventory around the Collison house. I don't have a CPU that's newer than a 4th gen. So like I'm out, so to speak. Like
right.
Here's the deal, right? I think the insider builds are going to pretty much work forever. So
I think, well, no, they do have expirations.
No, but if you stay on the program, Rich.
You're right. Yeah,
and you can. Now they have the levels. They used to have a big, medium, and small, or too soft, too hard, just right, whatever it was, right? Now they've got this dev and then like a preview,
dev, beta, and release preview.
Preview. And you can kind of be, if you're in the dev, you're definitely getting the most recent all the time. Yep. I got both those updated. If you're in that, what's the middle one? Beta. It's not as frequent, but you could stay in beta. You would get updates maybe a little bit more regular than you would get just the standard updates that you get with Windows. And you could probably, regardless of your if they decide to lock this down to, I think they're definitely going to make TPM a line in the sand.
Yeah,
I really do, right?
I think CPU's probably got the biggest chance of backing up a level or two. Yeah. Here's the interesting thing, right? They put word out when they announced the upcoming build, and they said getting ready for the first insider preview. They did talk about the fact that and this was around the time specs were still, an issue, quote unquote, to being in the right channel. They were talking about that if your dev machine wasn't able to run Windows 11 at the spec level, you would be pushed down into beta when that they expect to put it down into beta sometime this, quote unquote, summer. I think it'll be this month sometime. But Here's the reality, guys, right? I think I think RTM for Windows 11 is probably build 22,000, and we will get a series of cumulative updates in dev channel to kind of continue to tweak things, fix it, no issue. They're getting a ton of feedback. Okay. I know they're getting a ton of feedback. And then as it moves into beta, it'll resume. Beta will be where this build is tested and proved to be ready for release. Here's the interesting thing, right? There is no expiration date on Windows 11. You know how you normally see an expiration date around dev channels? There is no, you mentioned that there is no expiration date. It is listed as version 21H2. So will Windows 10 get an update this fall, or will we just see Windows 10 get maintained with monthly cumulative updates?
They're going to run 2 channels. That's just the.
You think they're going to run 2 dev?
I do.
Because the dev's already gone 11. There's no more 10 in dev.
I don't know. It's a good.
And in order to revert to 10, you've got to go clean. That's why dev is kind of that unique channel. You cannot get to stable through dev. You can get to stable through beta, and you get to stable through release preview. There's an option that works really well, by the way, to say next major release, don't give me any more preview builds, and it works very well.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work in dev, huh?
Not in dev. No, dev can't get you back to stable.
Okay. So right now, if I want to be able to go back to stable at some point, don't go into the Windows Insider program and upgrade to 11.
Yeah, in dev, you'll want to wait for beta. You'll want to wait for beta to get it if that's what you want to do. But every one of the devices I've installed it on, I have since done a reset on after doing the initial install, just because I wanted a clean starting place for everything. And that works just like it always has. So you can do a reset and get clean. And then I just, I know it's a pain to set things back up. And I'm one of those weird guys. I like things to match on every device. So muscle memory works as much as possible. Right. So I really do prefer that. So I all of my devices have that matching start menu now. I got to tell you, how much did you use Live Tiles, for instance? Live Tiles have really created an uproar that they're not in Windows 11.
Yeah, I've never used them.
No, they got deprecated too fast.
They weren't deprecated, but developers didn't support them.
Right.
Even they were just. I think I went static on the start menu a couple of years ago with granted big icons, big squares, but Windows 11's menu, it's just icons there, right? You can scroll. So when you open that menu and you scroll your wheel, if you have more than 3 lines of pinned apps, it will go down to those next ones. And I haven't tested it to see how far I can go, but so far I've got 3, 4, 5 rows of icons in that part with all my mostly used stuff right there handy. I used to keep a lot of stuff on the taskbar. I don't anymore.
But same terminology, right? I can right click and say save to start menu.
Yeah, you can right click it and it'll say unpin from start, pin to start, pin to taskbar, uninstall if it's a store app.
There's a recommended section in there as well. Where they're putting things in, right?
Yeah, the recommended tends to be documents recently accessed and apps either recently installed or used. So that I have not seen like recommended apps pop up in here like they do on 10 sometimes. You know how that you get a suggestion. Right now, recommended tends to focus on apps installed or documents that you've recently accessed. I think this is where we're going to see the replacement for timeline. That's kind of where they're putting your most recently accessed stuff, because timeline is also deprecated. That's even deprecated in Windows 10, right? That's gone as of the 21H1 update.
Right.
Which, again, here's the reality of Windows. These guys know how to look at telemetry. They know what features are getting used. And I'm telling you, they're going to invest the development time into the stuff that's getting used, not the stuff that's why Live Tiles went away, because people weren't using them.
Yeah. Good on the phone. Not so great.
Oh, they're great on the phone, but
not so great on the PC.
Yeah, it's a little different.
They were fine. It's just people didn't use them that way. Mike, did you want to add something?
Well, no. So one other thing that I saw in the notes for Windows 11 that was deprecated that had me really concerned, but maybe they're just as a new version, is OneNote. Are they going away from what? I mean,
they're just not automatically installing it. So
okay.
OneNote for Windows 10 will not automatically be installed as part of a base install. You can still. I'm running it right now because that's my favorite.
Good. Well, when I heard that, because we use it at work, actually, my coworker and I who work on the same team, I mean, that we live in it. You should see, it's kind of actually probably dangerous.
It's where I do all my research.
Yep.
All my story research is in there when I'm working on storylines or writing stuff and preparing for stories. They're working on the OneNote for Windows, not the one for Windows 10, the store app. But so there was talk about it gaining capabilities, a couple years ago.
Great.
It's been now said that's going to gain more and more capability to match kind of and do what it does. But yeah, so they won't automatically install it.
Okay.
And of course, what the other thing that's gone is Internet Explorer is disabled in Windows 11. So it's still there as a stub, but it points to Edge, and it points to Edge's IE mode.
Just wish they'd put a stake in that thing.
Oh, they need to
just be done with it.
They need to.
It is. At dinner tonight, I was telling Sarah asked me, hey, what are you guys talking about tonight? And I was telling Windows 11, and she's like, so what's different? So we were mentioning how this gets, how the start menu kind of gets centered, and she says, about time. Like that's where it should have been all along. This drives me crazy that it was all the way to the left.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I know it for her, that change will make sense. She was
you can't move it. It can't go back to the left side.
Of course.
Here's the funny thing, right? There's some law. I forget what I seen it on TIFT law or something. Anyway, it's this law of just taking your mouse and slamming it right down in the corner to get access to that menu, right? I think Steven Sinofsky famously wrote probably 3,000 words about this law when he was building Windows 8. But so people have brought that up. But muscle memory is muscle memory, right? I have purposely stuck with the icons and the taskbar centered because I want to use the OS as it's being designed and developed. And you know what? Muscle memory kicks in after a few days.
Rich, here's the deal, though. So, Wieger talked me into this M1 Mac. Back at the beginning of the year. Come on, Mike. I got to give you credit for it, right? I mean,
was it me?
No, it wasn't you. No.
I was gonna say. I was like, I thought that discredit. Oops, I just pressed.
Oops.
I thought you said
that was not a vulgar word.
I was setting my phone down. And I put it right on my mixer, and it hit
did not tell you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't think that was.
It was Ed Sullivan. It was Ed Sullivan. But Rich, now Windows and Mac are really the same user experience. I mean, it is no different than, it looks, it acts, they're in the same spot, the only difference is the time is in the upper right-hand corner on Mac and the time is in the bottom right-hand corner for Windows, but they're moving closer together. So when I saw this interface, I was like, oh, okay. Like it just kind of makes sense to me. I could go all the way to the left or I could go to the center. I do that because I run a dual, because I run both Windows and Mac together here.
Right.
I have PC, Mac, PC in my monitors, and they're all pulled together with synergy. I try not to think about the OS. I try to think, how do I get things done?
Just the work you're doing.
Yeah. How do I get things done?
See, ultimately, that's the thing, though, right? And we've talked about this before, I'm sure, that use the tool that works for you to get the job done, right? What other people use is what their preferences are. It's what their particulars are. I've been itching. I continue to watch and see if I can't find a great deal or get some company to send me a Mac Mini or something, because just to get into the OS and start to kind of explore. At one point, I cover OSs, but at one point I tried to get the company to buy a $600 Mac Mini. And they just refused to spend the money to get me the experience on this. So I don't write much about Mac OS. I write a lot about Windows. And we cover Chrome OS a little bit and things like that, but not at the extent we do Windows. But because I want, being such a Windows guy, I want to kind of understand, like you were just saying, Jim, they are, and you're talking about a very visual connection between the two OSs. Functionality wise, there might be some slight differences, but it's about the app or the program you're accessing to do your work. And there are some tools for some people that are better on Mac than they are on PC and vice versa. And so that's where it ultimately gets to. You got to use the tool that works best for you.
Yeah, I think so. And that's been my journey over the since January. I think I picked that up in January, Mike. Does that sound right? Have I had the Mac since January? Do you think?
I think you ordered in January and it arrived early in February, right? And it was supposed to be like late February. It arrived I think like a week earlier, 2 weeks ago.
And I'm to the point now, I don't struggle anymore. And there's differences. Mike and I talk about this, the difference between Control C, Control V,
Oh, gotcha.
And Apple key, or what do you call that?
The command key.
Command
Yep.
And so between that and work, I'm kind of, oh nope, that's not the right one. And now that Windows has the cache, the copy cache where you can go back and
the clipboard, the Windows clipboard.
That's actually, so now
that's clever. Yeah,
so
I love
actually having the Mac help me find that or use that key, that keystroke, because that's what does it on the Mac. On the PC, that brings up the clipboard. So it just kind of reminds, like, oh, and it doesn't harm. It's not bad. I just choose the one that I want. And it's a great reminder that I've got that copy paste clipboard.
Yep.
I copy and paste a lot.
Yeah.
And so for the things I do, I'm codes at work or people's information or email addresses that we're updating, copy and paste that all the time. So that's become a really important feature for me. And so this has been like, okay, this is kind of cool. Two new features, I think, though, for most people want to think about. Rich, that swipe from the left gets you now
the widgets, what they call widgets now.
Yeah, widgets are kind of back. Those had been on the right side. They're now a swipe in.
Oh, you're talking about the old Charms bar.
Yeah,
that used to be on the right side.
Well, in Windows 7, the Windows 7 widget.
Oh yeah, those old little programs you could run on the desktop. Yeah,
I love those things.
Oh yeah, those were cool.
There weren't very many of them.
There were kind of rogue sites that kept those up and running for a long time after Windows 7.
Yeah, I like that, especially for like CPU utilization. And on the Mac, I forget the name of the, I bought what's it called, iStatistica, that gives me all that information with a single click. I can get to it. I love I love those widgets because I could get a single click access to some of those things. What do you think about now? It's got all that crappy news in it, but
yeah.
What do you think about that swipe in from the left?
I think if you're on a pure touch device, by the way, you can actually get that to go full screen.
Okay.
So tablet mode is gone in Windows 11. There is no longer a button over in the notification center to turn on tablet mode.
Right.
However, they did show this a little bit in the event, and they show they are really working to just make touch a part of the OS now. They showed this clip of where you detach the screen and automatically the taskbar icons spread out a little bit to make bigger touch targets. They showed that the widget bar, which will come if you click on the widget icon on the taskbar, it comes up on the left side of the screen. But I've not tried this on touch device. I need to try this, but as I understand it, on a touch device, you swipe in from the left. There you go. And if you swipe one more time, I think that will go full screen from the left. So double swipe twice.
That's hard to do backwards.
Yeah, I got you. But did that take it full screen? Or do you maybe have to grab it and drag? I can't remember.
Let's.
That reminds me, honestly, of iPad. A lot of like the notification center and things like that, like from iPad, and like that left of pane view that I've never really fully utilized. My wife actually for work just got an iPad Pro. The college provided it to her. And so I've actually been playing around with that, and just because I've never had an iPad Pro. But that look right there reminded me a lot of what I've seen from that.
Not working for me, Rich, but that doesn't.
We'll do it. There was something they showed that. So if you swipe in from the left, you get that. No, swipe. Come on. I know there's a way that
from the right now brings in your notification center, right?
That's correct. It opens the notification center.
Notification and calendar.
I'm not a real fan of that calendar always being there. I'd love to be able to toggle that off. I've done some feedback on that. But yeah, so the old Charms bar swipe from the right will bring in notification center or a calendar. Swipe in from the left brings in the widgets. And I know there's a way that it goes big, but now I'm going to have to go find out because that's going to drive me nuts. So they're doing things to help with touch just as a part of the operating system, as opposed to this tablet mode.
Well, there was that idea that, okay, when it's docked, I want to use it like a desktop. As soon as I undock it, flip it to that tablet mode. But it was jarring and it never worked.
Oh yeah, it never worked consistently.
Then later on, they're like, okay, we'll give you the option to switch that thing around.
Yeah.
And you could do that, but then I would always need the touch targets in different spots. So I'd be flipping it in and out of tablet mode. And I was like, this is dumb.
Yeah. No, now it's more natural to where when it senses that you're going into touch mode, it just kind of transitions. It just makes that possible.
Yeah.
The widgets, I'm not, it's kind of like Edge, right? On the new Edge, when you set up your landing page, your start page, when you open a new tab, I'm so glad there's an option to turn all that content off, and keep that simple. I'm not a big fan of that. I've been through kind of setting up things on the widgets, and they're growing some widgets. There's going to be widgets. Oops, wrong button. Widgets are going to be third party. So third party developers will be able to build widgets to go in here. I assume they'll be distributed through the store, because the store is going to distribute everything now. I mean, not only Android apps, but also Win32 apps, UWP apps, whatever form of Windows development is used to create an app, it's going to be in the store now, in this new store. It will no longer be tied to just kind of one package. However you package your app will be able to be done in the store, and it will be accessible to people. Right now, I think they have widgets for calendar, to-do, traffic, weather, photos, stock watch list, esports, tips, and I said calendar. So right now, it's very limited with what they have. Now, there's an option to manage your news and interest. I don't see this connecting well right now. I go in and I change things, and it doesn't seem to do anything. I still seem to get, for the longest time on widgets, I kept changing the widget to NFL, right? The sport one. And it kept changing back to NBA. One time it showed me NBA, and it showed me football teams. So that's back end kind of stuff. But now it's finally stuck. I've actually got NFL showing for more than one day now. So there's a lot of potential there. Would I love to be able to say, only show me my widgets, don't show me all those news stories? Yes. I think that should be an option like it is on Edge. Right? Give me the option to turn that content off. And I will tell you what, I'll use widgets left, right, and center for certain things, kind of like what we did back in Windows 7. I think there's a lot of potential there as compared to live tiles.
Yeah. Not a fan of it. Still not a fan of it for the tablet. Like, Windows 11 for the tablet.
Gotcha.
Even with the changes, touch targets are still too small. Using a desktop operating system as a tablet, it's just never been good. Yeah. It's what hampered the original tablets back in 2003. Because they didn't have the Windows, the old Windows phones that tried to go that route. Remember the old 3. Whatever they were, 3.5. It hampered them. So it's still not. They've got some work to do.
There's work to be done.
Yeah,
no doubt.
It's going to be a tablet. It's not a great mic. You mentioned an iPad, and that's just still a killer experience when you're thinking about on a tablet with your big fat fingers touching things. And it's really optimized for it. And so Rich, I think it'll be interesting to see.
And Apple doesn't have to cross that barrier. They don't have to cross a touch barrier on the MacBook, for instance,
right?
Because they have stuck with this idea of not putting a touchscreen there.
Correct, and adamant about not,
and very adamant. Yeah. But when you go to their tablets that are built for touch, you obviously see the results of that work. It would be interesting to see how they might, could they cross that barrier if they wanted to eventually put a touchscreen on a Mac? I don't know if they will. I don't know. I mean, they kind of got their ecosystem is well connected, right? So especially now with the latest version of the Mac OS, with the access to the App Store and stuff like that. But it'll be interesting to see if they ever make that move. Microsoft has been working in that world since Windows 7 days, very rudimentary, right? Early touch stuff in the Windows 7 days. Windows 8.8 and 8.1, we know where that went, right? It went too far to the touch world. And then 8.1 brought that back a little bit. 7 initially, or 10 initially, was going to look like, oh my good. And so Microsoft still lives in a world of a complex between touch and UI.
Well, their best touch OS was Windows Phone. It was really good.
But it was built for phone. Unfortunately, you don't translate that to a desktop.
No, but that could have been blown out. They could have, if they really wanted to follow Apple's lead on this and be Apple. That's Sanoski,
right?
Wanted to be Apple in those days. They would have taken they just would have taken the phone OS and blown that out to tablet size and made that thing.
Oh, and made the tap for the tablets. Yeah, that could have translated to that old Surface RT.
I know. It totally could have.
I still have that here somewhere.
Totally could have. So that would have been a good move. I still don't know. There had to be politics behind that, right?
Maybe.
In those days, for that thing to die, because it was a really good OS. It did a lot of good things. And talk about live tiles. It did live tiles right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of those things that I've still got my Nokia phone in the drawer that I fire up from time to time and go, oh, this was so good.
Yeah.
Why didn't this get any farther? The Xbox companion app is front and center on the install. And so if you want to, if you're an Xbox, if we mentioned this earlier, but if you're into gaming and you're into Xbox and you're not using some of the Xbox apps to kind of manage or interact with your Xbox environment, Mike, I mean, I'm not a gamer, but they look great. And so that's,
Well, and for me, so the reason we use it the most is because all my buddies are usually on Xbox. I'm one of the rare that went to the PC Master Race side. My brother-in-law as well. Well, with Game Bar, we can still use Xbox Game Chat, and those guys on their Xbox with their headset, they don't have to do anything different, right? Because Discord is popular, but that's for everyone if everyone's on PC. So for talking to your Xbox friends, we use Game Bar for that, and it works great. I mean, even inviting to parties, inviting to games through there, cross-platform. We do the same thing when we're playing Call of Duty or Forza, right? We do Forza with our computer and Xbox friends. And it works really, really well. Now, the companion app, I've noticed they've been moving more and more into just the Xbox app.
Yeah, that's where they're going. That's where it's all going.
So Game Pass, because I've been loving
Game Pass is in there.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Rich, the biggest addition for me has been the EA Access, because I am a huge sports gamer. I mean, that's where I started.
And that's where all the sports games are.
And they're all, the Vault, really, essentially, you get those all, they're not right away, but for free, essentially, quote unquote, right, with your membership.
If you can be patient enough to wait.
Well, yeah, and on the PC, exactly. Well, we started playing, my brother-in-law and I started playing FIFA and Madden on the computer. Now there's a lot of things that could be better, right? They still tell me everything, even though I'm playing with a controller, it still tells me all the controls in keyboard language. Even though I am playing with the controller. So, I mean, there's a few things that I still need to work out, but, working really well on the EA side, even some of the early ones that got ported over to PC.
Yep. No, like I said, that deal for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for PC and console is for just console. It's a great deal. I mean, the amount of games you get, but to get it Ultimate, to get the crossover stuff to the PC, we saw the Xbox had their big show last month, showed off all their new stuff that's coming up, and Forza Horizon 5, for instance, that's coming in November. All of that stuff is going to be on the PC as well. So I find myself able to game at my PC more often than I am at my console. Just for the nature. And I'm glad to be able to have access to that without having to worry about Steam, for instance.
Exactly.
I only did one game on Steam, and that was Fortnite. So, and right now Fortnite's not on my system because it takes up too much of my time for my studies and stuff. So it's uninstalled.
Well, and for me, Game Pass actually is killing my data cap through my internet provider, because you end up even if you're not going to play it right now, I'm like, ooh, that looks good. I'll play that at some point. I'll play that at some point. All of a sudden I've downloaded 300 gigs.
I try to now do all those downloads the last couple of days of the month, looking at my cap is, because I have 1 terabyte, 1.2 actually I have. So, I typically use about half of it, and a little less than half. But that's what if I've got a big download to do, or I will wait until the end of the month and eat up some of the data cap that's there. But it's great. I mean, it's becoming, I'm going to use a Microsoft term, ubiquitous, right? It's becoming quite ubiquitous where you do your thing at. And if anything has made Microsoft a huge success under Satya Nadella, it is embracing this idea of finding the users where they're at. Whether it's on a Mac or it's on, whatever it is. Your phone is a great example of connecting in the Android ecosystem to your desktop. I really love it frustrated me when I wasn't on a Samsung for a while. I'd upgraded to a OnePlus McLaren a few years ago, not accessible through your phone to do some of the casting the apps, basically. So I went back to the S21 this cycle and upgraded it. Now I've got full access to that. So Microsoft, I love the fact that they do embrace that. And writing about their enterprise side, they're very similar in their approach, in that Teams has become such a portal for everything in Microsoft 365, whether it be development or whether it be collaboration or productivity. Teams has become that hub for them. And that's where, so if they got you on 365, they got you in Teams. That's where they're going to deliver the goods. I just wrote today about the fact Skype for Business Online shutting down at the end of this month. Gone. Not Skype Consumer, not on-premises stuff, but Skype for Business Online gone on 31 July. And most people are already on Teams if you're a Microsoft 365 customer. But saying that, let's talk about that for a minute, right? This was a funny headline. Did you see the headlines right after the what was it? Oh, after the event on the 24th. The headlines that kind of dominated some of the news coverage was the fact that Microsoft was integrating Teams into Windows 11, right? They showed it off. They showed a chat, and they showed an integrated ability to share your screen and a mute button on the taskbar, right? A master mute button. So if you needed to mute all of a sudden. Well, the funny part is that all these sites went and wrote about this integration thing. Slack came out with a statement that day. Do you remember when Microsoft launched Teams in 2017? Mm-hmm. Slack published a full page ad in several newspapers saying, welcome to the world. Welcome to the ecosystem, right? Mm-hmm. We're friends. They're not so much friends anymore. No. They released a statement kind of lambasting Microsoft for using Teams or using Windows 11, the OS, to integrate Teams. But nobody read in depth enough to read that that's not for the enterprise level Microsoft Teams, that integration. It's for Teams personal. Mm-hmm. So it'll only work with the Microsoft account. It won't work with a work account or a school account. It only works with the personal Microsoft account. And all these headlines, big stories being written by companies saying, kind of backing up Slack's statement about this. And nobody understood the reality of what they were doing. It's just funny. Yeah. With so much focus for me these days on enterprise, I don't get to play the consumer part very much, but I was actually able to write about that a couple weeks ago and say, look, everybody's getting this wrong. And here's the reality of the circumstances. I mean, it's just funny to see the reactions, right? That's probably been the most fun of everything from the leak to the event and to the first preview build release is watching the reaction, especially on Reddit, guys. Reddit is the place to go if you want to truly kind of see how the day-to-day Joe likes or doesn't like something. And having been following that for a couple years now, it's an enlightening kind of. And by the way, I've come with an unofficial scientific assumption watching Reddit. Probably 80% of the problems people have with Windows is their own fault. They cause it themselves by tweaking something they shouldn't have tweaked or following.
Like
you know what I'm saying?
Like everything in tech is.
It's a lot of fun though. You got to give it to them. Windows 10, 6 years old, perfect kind of window to start to bring online this new version. Still support Windows 10 for another 4 years at least, and then that kind of Windows 11. Whereas opposed to Windows 7 closing down and the introduction of Windows 10, there wasn't as much of a crossover, if I remember right. So they were pushing really, really hard for people to get off 7 and get on 10. Remember all the craziness about it used to pop up a little thing in the system tray that says, get Windows 10 or get Windows X or something like that. They took a lot of heat for how hard they pushed. I suspect we're going to see a different approach to encouraging people to upgrade, especially with the potential spec change, especially with this 4-year overlap between the two OSs coming out. It's truly going to give them an opportunity to slowly kind of filter people over to Windows 11 to take, and I wouldn't, to get people on Windows 11 at a more normal pace, right? Instead of this hectic, crazy, because enterprises don't like that. Right. A lot of high-end consumers don't like that. Enterprises definitely don't like that. So,
well, I think they should take a clue from what happened, and if they really want to roll it out, just leak the final version and say it's a leaked. Oh, this is a leaked build.
Oh, people were looking for that thing everywhere. Man.
Yeah, that would they get everybody on it. Mike, did you want to add any? You look like you wanted to.
No, sorry. Nope.
No, you looked intent. I was like, I want to make sure you get in here. Rich, one more feature before we kind of wrap our thoughts on Windows 11 here. I do like, and this was available before, it's always been there, but I do like the ability to kind of generate new desktops.
Oh,
You don't like that, huh?
Oh no, I love it.
Oh,
Love it.
yeah.
Love it. I wrote a big piece a few months ago about in Windows 10, they're called virtual desktops, which is a bit of a misnomer.
It is.
They're actually just new canvases, new space to run apps in and programs. In Windows 11, they're called just desktops. And you have the ability to name them. And you got this in Windows 10 too. And in fact, in the preview builds in Windows 10, they gave you the ability to change the wallpaper on each one as well. And so you can change the name, you can change the wallpaper, and they persist between restarts. So if you set up 3 desktops, when you reboot, they're still there. The only issue I have around desktops, and I've made this known to them, I wrote about it, and I also talked to one of the PMs, is that we don't have any ability to configure these desktops. If I have a work desktop, I know what apps I'm opening on that desktop. I'm opening Teams. I'm opening Office in the browser so I can have Outlook. Because, by the way, guys, Office in the browser or Outlook in the browser, these are terrific. I mean, my work email on my main machine, I do through the browser. So Office.com, the ability to open Teams, and that's what I want open when I open that desktop, right? So I'd love to be able to save that configuration. Yeah. Same thing with my personal desktop. I almost automatically, the first 2 things I open on my personal desktop is Twitter. And these days I'm using a program out of the Windows Store called Feed Labs for my RSS feeds. Unfortunately, next-gen NG Reader, which was, I think, one of the early Feedly adopters, they were in their kind of, remember when Google Reader went away? Feedly was that first kind of platform that came in behind Google Reader. Well, next-gen Reader for Windows 10 was built in partnership. They were one of their early partners. Anyway, unfortunately, NG Reader is not being supported anymore. It doesn't look like it's getting updates. A lot of things breaking. So I had to go looking for a new RSS feed. And I used Feedly in the browser as a PWA for a while. But FeedLab in the Windows Store, in the Microsoft Store, is actually quite good. Has a lot of features in it, sharing and things of that nature. So anyway, so that's what I open. I open up Twitter, I open up Feed Labs, and I go through my RSS feeds and I look at social media. I'd love for that to be kind of a default configuration for my personal desktop, and have another one for my work. I have another desktop where I run my virtual machines just so I don't get confused. So this is the one thing that this feature is lacking. They've made it, you still have the ability to kind of flip back and forth between apps open on any desktop and thing. There's a setting that you can either look at everything open or what's open on your current view, your current desktop. And the Windows 11 and Windows 10 even does this well too. It switches back and forth between things quite easily. Shows you on the taskbar, there's an option to show everything that's open. You click on it, it goes to that desktop. If they would add the ability to configure these desktops with certain programs or certain, well, they're snap groups, right? Docking and undocking external monitors has been improved in Windows 11. And I just wish it had that ability to save a configuration. It's great to have the name. It's great to have a unique wallpaper, but I still got to go manually start that desktop up and get things running that I want to run. So hopefully, I don't know. I put it in the feedback hub. I've written about it. I gave a link to that to one of the program managers. Yeah. They brought the snap layout stuff, that really cool little menu that pops up when you go over the maximize button in an app or a window on Windows 11. It shows you all your different snap options based on the size of your screen. Today's update actually now it takes into account a smaller screen like the Go, for instance. It has less options compared to a widescreen or a typical 4:3. Is it 4:3 that Surface is normally, or 3:2? But
I think it's 4:3.
So I really do think the potential here with Windows 11, it is very early stages. All right. We've only have 2 public previews so far. The person from ZDNet that wrote the story that said it's an unfinished and unpolished mess was exactly right. It is, but that's where we're at. I think what we're going to see, I think we got the base core stuff done here. That's just my guess. We're going to quickly move into beta. Beta is going to allow them to iterate, to really do the polish. And yes, there's still legacy elements of Windows that are going to be of that nature, right? You may never see a dark mode of that kind of ancient thing, because the one thing Microsoft has to do compared to Mac is the legacy support, right? I think it's a huge difference in the size of that. Excuse me. So Microsoft has to support a lot of old stuff. in order to keep the enterprise happy. So
Yeah.
that can be a weight. That can be a weight sometimes to their ability to update. So I think the small spec bump and the little things they're doing to improve security and functionality, I think Windows 11 is going to be solid. I really do. I mean, it's a good start when you think about how early it is.
Rich, I don't actually mind that doesn't keep state on those desktops. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah, because I jump in there and open up different things and move them around.
Yeah.
And this was really, really helpful. I was doing a bunch of work on remote desktop so I was on the Mac going into Windows desktops. And then you can set with remote desktops, each one of those can be a screen, basically a desktop.
Oh.
So then you can command arrow through those to move in between. So
very cool.
I'd have 4 open or 3 open, and you could go desktop and then command arrow, go to one, command arrow, go to the second one, command arrow, go to the third one, and easily flip between those desktops. And then I'd close them out. They'd go away. And I actually like that because then those desktops wouldn't be sitting there doing something.
And did they, I don't remember, did they change the behavior? Does it cascade the apps? Because it used to be in Windows 10 early on with virtual desktops, if you close the desktop, the apps cascaded down so that you didn't quote unquote lose an app.
Yeah,
I'd have to try that because
it moves it over. It was super helpful on the Mac, and I think now I overcome that with just pure monitor space.
Right. No, so, I love my 34-inch widescreen.
Yeah. Well, and not just having one monitor, but I have 9 down here, Rich. So like I overcome monitor problems by just having more monitors.
Yeah.
Right. And listen, and my monitors are old. Like I've still got some old VGA monitors down. They're the early flat screen monitors, right, that we saw.
Oh yeah.
So I'm still recycling some of that old gear to kind of make it work. But I like physical monitor space. I do like times having a virtual, and I think we're seeing some early versions. This version and the Windows 10 version aren't all that different, but how you get to them is a lot easier. And so it is one of those things because it has kind of and I guess I could have done this in Windows 10, but because it's front and center on the taskbar right now, I'm more inclined to just click on that and then quickly switch between desktops if that's
no, I'm right there with you. The button on the taskbar really does make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Because before you had to hit Windows key tab and they were up at the top of the screen and I just tested, and they do, if you delete the desktop, they cascade down. If you just close them out, deleting the desktop cascades any open programs down. So now I have to rebuild my virtual machine and my work desktops, but that's easy. But you know what I'm saying though? I like that for clutter. I just find it easier to kind of focus in on what I'm doing to get away from the clutter with those. But again, it's handy for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, no, for sure. Mike, any other thoughts, questions on Windows 11 as we kind of bring this one in for a landing?
No, I'm excited that it can be used on the main machine. I'll probably wait till we get to beta so that I can switch back over to the stable. I do that a lot. On the Mac side, it's very similar, right? When they go into, you can get the beta and then just say, hey, wait until the next standard release. And then
that's what they do with the beta and release preview.
Yeah,
on the
so
Insider.
I'll probably wait until there, but I'm excited for all the gaming features. So I think, just upgrades to it, any efficiencies there. And the NVMe thing you had me interested too. I actually, on my desktop, I have 3 screenshots that I actually just tested because I put a 1 terabyte NVMe in here for my games. I already have an NVMe for my OS, but I put in another 1 terabyte for my games. And I was just doing speed tests on there with
they're so fast
with Crystal Disk Mark. So I was testing them, and they're insanely fast. So but it is weird how different they are compared to what tier of that M.2 you get. So
right. That can make a difference.
Pro compared to, I think I got a different one, slight, right? Nothing.
And also the PCI, right? If you're 3.0 or 4.0, my NVMe's, I have 1 4.0 and I have a 3.0. So both of them are fast.
That's my difference. I think we might have the same motherboard, so I didn't even think about that, Rich. Maybe
I have the ASUS X570 is what I
think
have.
that's what I have. The Asus or the ASRock, one of the two. I can't remember which one I have.
But those NVMe's, I couldn't believe how much difference it was between a standard SSD. And in fact, when I wrote the story whenever it was last year after I built my machine, I ran some benchmarks on or maybe I wrote a separate story talking about the difference between NVMe and SSD, and it's significant, the data speed.
Well, I can share that. I can show you guys that right now if you guys really want to see. Just real quick. So here are my two. Let me pull it up here. Share. Screen.
Yeah, pop it in there, and I'll share the screen. You want to come over and see this on YouTube?
Okay, so on the left, so these are both, solid state, right? The left one's the NVMe. The right one is just a standard SSD. I mean, so when we're talking about read speeds on the NVMe, 3,500 megabytes per second compared to 545 on the SSD. And then you go down to the write speeds, 2,000 on the NVMe and 487 on the SSD. And both of these were relatively, the NVMe was brand new. The SSD had only been in there for just a little bit. So it's not like this one has a lot of extended wear on it. And I remember the switch from spinners
to SSD, which was tremendous.
You guys want to see? Okay, so here's the spinner. I tested all three.
Wow.
Spinner was
so
down
slow.
To 215 read, 144 write on that spinner drive. So I mean, just look at the comparison there between the NVMe and the thing that I thought was interesting is a lot of the suggestions still, I hear people saying this is, hey, for your game disk, right? If you're going to store your games, you can keep that on a spinner. And while I think that's still somewhat true, I think we're starting to get to the phase where, I mean, there's a reason that Xbox, the new PlayStation have all moved to the high speed storage.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
Makes a difference in loading times.
Drastic. Because I did. So this spinner that we're looking at the speeds right here, this was where I stored all of my games. So I actually I skipped the whole SSD phase with my game storage and just went straight from spinner to NVMe. And I was shocked at the loading speeds, the little things, even just the jitters sometimes that you can tell it was trying to pull something.
Yep.
And it just works that much better. I know most games utilize RAM pretty well, but there are still loading times and things like that just have a drastic change.
For me, the difference between my SATA's consistent. So I'm running two different types of NVMe drives. I'm running a PCI Express 3.0 and a 4.0 one. And the difference between the SSDs they're down in the, I forget the numbers, but I mean, just they're in that low 500 type range. Then you step up to the 3.0 NVMe and you're peaking out at around 3,000. But when you get to the 4.0, over 5,000.
Wow.
I mean, the speed is just crazy. I had fun making the charts for mine, just playing around with it. But the difference in the speed is tremendous. It really is.
Well, I'm glad you bring it up because I think sometimes people go for the cheapest on Amazon. They don't realize that you can get a SATA drive that fits in that slot, right? And you think, oh, it's the skinny one. You see the looks like, oh, why is it so cheap? Well, it's going to give you the same speed as a regular SATA
SSD.
Yeah, really need to make sure it's that M.2 NVMe.
This little mini PC that I bought last year to replace a desktop that had failed, what used to be my podcast machine, it's got NVMe slots in it. I'm not using it, but I can go from SSD to NVMe in it. I mean, and it's a little box that's about this big, and it's quite a powerful little device for $220. It's crazy.
What I love is all the standalone NASs, like your Synologies and everything, are starting to put those slots in, and then it's a lot smaller space to put in a cache drive into those Synologies than having to put in the old school SATA SSDs.
Yeah, most of them come with their own hits. Some of them have the built-in heat sink, or some of them have it's easy enough to add a heat sink to it. So, definitely the way I would go in the future,
for sure.
Rich, for folks that are listening, if they want to follow you, where's the best place?
The best place to find me is on Twitter, and that's at WinOBS. Everything and anything I'm doing or saying or thinking about goes there.
All right. And then as you think about what's ahead for you coming up for the rest of the year, what are you looking forward to?
Well, continuing with this Windows 11 stuff, like I said, I think we know the base of what 11 is going to be. There's still missing some announced stuff like the Teams personal integration, and the Android apps. I think that's the biggest Android apps in the store. Is going to be interesting to see how that works. So obviously we're going to continue testing Windows 11 through the summer and fall, and that's going to kind of draw a lot of the air in the room moving forward. I mean, everybody's having fun with it right now, and we're getting our share of. I watched one author go from "How dare you, Microsoft, tell me I have to upgrade my machine to upgrade to Windows 11" in a 4-day period to going, "I give in. I want the new machine. I want Windows 11." So it's crazy to have seen these journeys by people, and so obviously the interesting story about Windows 11 is going to be what eventually kind of comes out of the spec stuff. Where are they going to take that? I honestly believe 2.0 is going to stick. I think that's an easy one to stick with, right? Because devices for the last 5 years have had it. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, if you're running a 5-year or older machine, in a lot of circumstances, you might not be taking advantage of new technology like solid state drives or potentially NVMe drives or even more advanced CPU stuff. So Windows 11 is what the big thing is to watch. On a personal level, I've got 3 more online classes left after we finish this semester, our 2 scripture classes. And I do 1 in the fall and then 2 in the spring. And we have local stuff that we'll be doing in our final year of formation and stuff. And it's still going to be writing about the enterprise and writing about enterprise IT and what's going on in the world of that.
Rich, thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for pinging me and being like, "Hey, this," because I hadn't, to be honest with you,
it was perfect timing.
It was perfect timing. We had the slot open. 11 just came out. You wanted to talk about it. I'm like, yeah, let's do this thing. So thanks for saying yes. Thanks for reminding me. Like, hey, it's been a year. We could come on and talk about Windows 11. So thanks for doing that.
So I can't believe it had been a year though. I looked. I went back looking at our DMs to see when it was, and it was last May.
It was May.
I just got awarded my 12th MVP award on July 1st in Windows and Devices for IT.
Yeah, good.
And then I think it's my 6th or 7th on the insider side. But
yeah, I guess I should have led with that in the beginning of the show, that you're a big deal MVP.
Oh, I'm not a big deal.
So I apologize for that. But Rich, we always appreciate your expertise. Mike and I will wrap this up. We'll save you the boring wrap up stuff, but thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey,
talk to you later. Peace, everybody.
Stay healthy, my friend.
Thanks.
All right. You bet. Take care.
How do I leave?
Just close out the browser. There we go. That's the awkward. Have you noticed in the business meetings, everybody waves to each other now.
I know.
Kind of standard, like, okay, well, we're going to wrap this up a few minutes early. Guys. Thanks, everybody. And everybody's like,
yep.
You see everybody, oh, that did some weird color.
Weird autofocus.
Well, Mike, I think, I don't know if we're not going to talk about Windows 11 that much going forward, but I'm sure it'll hit the podcast from time to time.
When it hits the beta channel,
that's
when I'll probably talk about it again. Just mentioning how
it goes. I'd be interested in your take on this from a gaming perspective, just to be honest. With you. Maybe keep us up to as we get in there. Yep. Kind of think about some of the gaming bits that are coming with it. And
did we talk about how long is it typically until it hits the beta?
Oh, I think it's going to probably. I think you have 2 months.
Okay.
I mean, it's not even August. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. But in the next month or two, 30, 60 days, probably we'll see a beta.
Right.
And then we'll probably see an October. I bet I'm going to say October 11th. No, that wouldn't make sense. November 11th would be the right day, right? Because then it's 11/11, 2011. Right. So
no,
it's not 2011. I was wishing it was that, but it's 2021.
It's another one.
Yeah. No, I was just wishing I went back a decade there. So yeah, we'll kind of stay up to date on it. Next week, we'll spend a little time going through the disaster some lessons learned.
Yeah.
On
lessons
that
learned for sure.
And actually, as we were talking about Windows 11, I think my laptop, I have a Core i5 Ultrabook from, I want to say it's maybe 2016. That probably is maybe the only one that can do the real upgrade when we get there. So we'll have to see. But that'd be perfect on a laptop. It's not touchscreen. That'd be perfect. And I'll be honest, I'm going to run the the dev channel permanently on the Surface until the Surface just gives up the ghost.
That makes sense.
Right. That's kind of, why not? Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
You know, they allow me to get it done. That did remind me we should probably get Ryan and Bob from Think Computers back on. Lots of things with this have changed, and maybe even some of the gaming space, some of the hardware shortages, some of those kinds of things. I'll reach out to those two guys and get it back on. Mike, anything else you want to add before we wrap it?
No. This thing always has me on the trigger finger of like, do I just go to dev? Do I not? So no, we should stop talking about it before.
Why wouldn't you go to dev?
Well, only because to get out, you can't get back out of dev to
yeah.
stable, right? And okay, so like I am in a weird situation. Every other computer device in my house, I can go clean slate so easy because everything's in the cloud. With this machine, all my ham radio software is from like really small developers on a website, and to install it and to get all my settings back would just be a pain. Only because of all the ham radio software.
No,
everything else you could get back downloaded.
Good thinking. That's good thinking. That's really good thinking. So yeah, think through it. You know, you don't have to. It'd be better. I'll be honest. It'd be better in a VM for you to get.
That's what I might play around with.
So, well, a couple reminders on our way out here. One, big thanks to Christian over at Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. Of course, Christian will do that for you if you need any kind of hosting. He specializes in WordPress, but if you need any other kind of hosting, I mean, Christian specializes in everything. Let's be really clear about that. So maplegrovepartners.com, plan start. It's $10 a month, and he can get you going kind of there. Mike, I looked the other day. I think we're on year 4 of HelloFresh. Like, we're
you guys are still doing it, huh?
Oh yeah, we came out of
every week.
We were going to switch over to like doing our own thing. That's always been the plan. Like,
like once you got enough recipe cards, right?
And
I remember you've been saying that.
It's just that goes back to my pre-show DIY conversation. Like, I don't want to make my own boxes. I'll just work extra hard so that I can just pay for those, because it's super convenient to have just all the right, measurements, tear the bag, put it in. You're not measuring things. It's just so easy. So if you haven't checked out HelloFresh in a while, I think you can go to theaverageguy.tv/HelloFresh or just ping me, Jim at theaverageguy.tv. We have plenty of coupons to give away. Maybe you're just bored with your current diet, and coming out of the pandemic, a good way to kind of learn. I'm a million times better of a cook now, Mike, than I was. I'm also a better cigar smoker. So that tells you what I've been doing during it. So we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Mike and I next week, we're going to do some catch up. So we've had guests on for a while now and some various things going on. Time for Mike and I to catch up. If you want to jump in. If you're listening live or you're listening the week after we publish this, go to homegadgetgeeks.com and leave us a message. That'd be kind of great to maybe answer a few questions or give us some feedback on Windows 11 or what you like or what you hate. We take all that stuff. So head out there, homegadgetgeeks.com. Well, do me a favor. I usually get a notification, but if you do leave a message, just shoot me an email. It says, hey, I left you a message. Just kind of a nice reminder to go out and check those things. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. We're coming up, Mike, on show 500. 4 away from 500. So, and you've been doing this with me since 2 and some change, right?
I really need to write this down and put it on a sticky note on this monitor, because we talk about this when did you join?
We can never remember.
Look it up. We can never remember. Right around there.
Well, I think the good news is we're going to get to see each other this weekend, right?
I think so.
That may work out. So we may get, usually I head out your way. I think you're coming mine, and it'll be super fun to spend a little bit of time with you. So it'll be good to see you. We will want to see you next week. So come back out, join us live, do all those things that you do. If you're listening to us live, we'll do a smidgen of post show. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.